Another year of movies has come and gone with 2019 coming to a close. Today, actually, it's New Year's Eve, and I'm filming this right before the start of our New Year's Eve party. So just to preface, this isn't actually like my best movies of 2019. This is just what I think are most enjoyable for me. So whatever ones have the most rewatchability, whichever ones I found the most interesting and exciting. So it's not exactly like a best of 2019, it's just my favorites of 2019. So to start off at number 10, we have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is Quentin Tarantino's return to the screen this year. This homage to old-style cinema was really poignant for me. It pointed out a lot of the ways that the old filmmaking business kind of glossed over the way that stunt actors and stunt doubles would get treated and glorified the actors and the people behind the camera, when in reality there's so many more people and so many more pieces that go around to making a movie. And I thought that this was just a really nice way to kind of bring that topic up and get it out into the open and into the public eye. So number 9 for me is Knives Out. Knives Out's a little bit higher on most other people's lists. For me, I still think it's a really good movie. It's just, for me, Rian Johnson's got a lot of subversion, which in this case it hits really well. It's just a lot of the time I feel like people demonize cliche and trope to the detriment of a lot of other films. I think Knives Out is done really well. It's a really good genre piece, and it's very enjoyable. I haven't really thought about how much I would be interested in rewatching it over and over again now that I know it would be nice for probably a second or third watch. But after that, I don't think that I would really enjoy the entirety of the movie. A lot of the jokes would still land, but not the entire movie itself would be as impactful now that I know the front and back. So for number 8 on my list is Booksmart. I think Booksmart is probably one of the better comedies to come out of this century so far. Outside of its rewatchability and its complete down-to-earth awkward humor that you get from a good teen coming-of-age story, it's just a really solid. It's got great narrative, it's well-directed, it's well-acted, it's from front to back, top to bottom, really well produced and really well designed. I think this was one of the movies that really surprised me this year. I really didn't go into it expecting much. Same kind of thing that I did with Good Boys. I was expecting similar styles of comedy, but Good Boys didn't land as well as Booksmart did for me. It's definitely one of the movies that I think if you didn't see in theaters, you could definitely still watch it at home and get the same kind of value out of it, because you really don't need the cinematic experience for it. It's just a really great story told in a really humorous, light, and kind of lens. So number 7 on my list is Jojo Rabbit, the Taika Waititi directed and acted Nazi satire, which is a really interesting phrase to be able to use in this day and age of political correctness. I think Taika and everybody involved in the movie do a really good job of dancing around subject matter in a very tactful way. It's funny when it needs to be funny. It hits hard when it needs to hit hard. There's a lot of emotional moments in this that really can resonate, and a lot of good messages about treating other people who think differently from us and who have been demonized by the people who are in power and the people who are around us. And a satire that's based content is, at surface level, very discriminatory. It does a really good job of bringing up these issues and bringing them to light in a modern kind of sense of our own politics. Number 6 on my list is Midsummer. I don't want to call it a horror because it's really way too bright to be one, but it's directed by Ari Aster. If you saw Hereditary, same guy who did that. I've become a huge fan of Ari since Hereditary, and all of the movies that he's put out have been really solid. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the same feel that you get out of a Jordan Peele movie. It's a little bit less politically charged and a little bit more of a spectacle for Ari Aster, I think. Kind of detaches you from the situations that we live in today. There are still aspects of it that get to touch on, but it's not as in your face in the forefront, which I think makes this movie extremely enjoyable, especially with the excessive amount of gore that it has. There are a lot of movies that come out that do gore really terribly. I think the gore here is what makes the movie kind of more tense. It's just realistic. It's off-putting, and it's really well done. And this is definitely one of the ones that put me on the edge of my seat from at least 10 to 15 minutes into the movie on, because the first 15 minutes of this movie are rough, and then the rest of it gets you that little bit of tension, and then it pays off really well at the very end. Number 5 on my list is Rocket Man. Rocket Man was easily one of my biggest surprises of the year, especially with how I saw Bohemian Rhapsody the year prior and didn't really appreciate the way and the direction that it took. I think a lot of what Bohemian Rhapsody did wrong, Rocket Man did right. A lot of the editing in Bohemian Rhapsody I found was kind of clunky. They tiptoed around some more of the sensitive topics with Freddie Mercury's life, and I think the way that they kind of brought all these issues with drug addiction and his Elton John's dealing with his homosexuality were really impactful, and the way that they addressed those were very honest and truthful, and I don't think they could have done a better job with this movie, really, especially since it's a little bit of a musical, which kind of turned a lot of people off to the movie. I feel like this fits Elton John's personality a little bit better, and it gives it that same kind of rewatchability that you would have with Disney movies or something like that, where you know the songs, can sing along to them, can still enjoy the sequences because the choreography is really good, but then the only differences here are obviously the drug use and blatant homosexuality that Disney has kind of turned away from for a while. So number 4 on my list is The Farewell. This is one of the first years that I actually started to indulge myself in foreign films. I think The Farewell was one of the first ones that really kind of blew my expectations out of the water. I don't think this movie would have been made in Western cinema and been able to be pitched as hard, just because the way that the story is built off of this realistic notion, and the writer actually had that experience in their own mind. It's very difficult for people to be able to write and produce movies that are that down to earth without some sort of selling point in American film. So I'm very appreciative that this movie got out here and was able to be distributed. It's well acted. I believe the actress' name's Awkwafina, who easily her best role of this year, despite her also being in Jumanji: The Next Level. But it's a very nice kind of window into the cultural dynamics and the views of death and modern medicine when it comes to treating the elderly. And it's just one of the things that I think was a really refreshing movie for the year. Number 3 on my list is Joker. I think this is one of the most uncomfortable movies that I've sat through in a while, mainly because of the way that they're able to tell Arthur Fleck as a very sympathetic protagonist, if you want to use that term very loosely. You see a lot of what he struggles with the classist outlook that the city of Gotham has towards those who are in the lower class and those who are struggling with mental illness and disability. And it's a very real topic that tackles it head on and kind of makes you face your own biases. And there are a lot of instances where the explosions of emotion and pent-up aggression that Arthur has, you understand, and it makes you crawl on your own skin and look at yourself. And it's well shot, it's well acted. I think Joaquin deserves an award of some sort for this performance, even though I think a lot of people will still gloss over it, even though it is like a comic book movie still. I think it's a little bit far detached from source material for it to be considered that as like you would see with the Marvel movies or anything of that sort. But it was talked up to the same degree that I think it deserves. Number 2 on my list is Parasite. And again, with the foreign film kind of coming to blow my expectations out of the water, it was kind of very binary in tone, which I was not expecting, especially from the trailers that I saw. I typically avoid trailers for movies that I know I'm going to see, but this was one that I really was kind of interested in just from the first trailer that I saw. I wish I hadn't, because I was expecting some sort of twisted turn towards the end, and that that kind of ruined a little bit of the dynamic for me, since the first half of the movie is really comedic and really based around family dynamic of taking advantage of the rich. And it's a really good inversion of classist tones that you'd get. So it's kind of the exact opposite of what the Joker was, where in the rich are taking advantage of the poor, and Parasite, the poor are taking advantage of the rich. And it's a really good kind of balance in Parasite for that. The end of this movie is wild. Again, kind of with Knives Out, I think it's ruined a little bit for multiple viewings, but I still think that there's enough substance here from, within the first hour and a half to 2 hours that you can still get good messages and good things out of it every single time that you see it. And the final movie on my list for this year, if you couldn't tell by the large array of expensive cups that I'd bought at the movie theaters that I've been to, is Avengers Endgame. There has not been any movie of this scope and any universe of this scope in the history of film. Still, one of my favorite movies of all time is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. I think it holds a lot of weight on. There's 2 movies. This movie did the same exact thing times 5. Or it's years and years of film and story building, and a lot of people say that Infinity War is a better film overall. I think standalone looking at the Marvel movies is very difficult to do. I think since that narrative is built up over so many movies, looking at each movie by themselves is very an iffy way to go about judging them, which is why it's very difficult to list things like this. But I think Endgame was the perfect punch, the perfect ending, a lot of great fan service moments, a lot of good narrative moments, character building, spectacle, excitement, humor, a great balance of everything that you'd want in a good movie-going experience, especially gauging off of how many times I saw it in theaters. Being able to watch this movie over and over and over again, I don't think it'll ever get boring. So it easily would make the number 1 on my list for my most favorites. So that's my top 10 favorite movies of 2019. I may try and end up doing a couple more videos around 2019's, especially with top 10 worst. I went and saw Cats just around Christmas, so it might just be good enough to do a video just for Cats. I may also end up doing an end of decade wrap up within the next couple of days, depending on how much time I have on my hands. There are still a couple of this year that I didn't get to see that I'm really upset about, that I didn't get to look at. For example, before anybody says anything, I haven't seen 1917, I haven't seen Uncut Gems, I haven't seen Little Women. A lot of these late releases around award season get very difficult to fit into multiple movies at a time. I try to go see 2 or 3 around this time of year. I try to see everything that gets nominated. So if any of those end up showing up on a ballot, then I'll definitely see them at some point, but I just could not see them before the end of the year. But yeah, just the stereotypical kind of YouTube thing. Let me know in the comments if there are any that I missed, if there's anything that you think I should look into, or any movies that you think were really overshadowed. Well, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Hope to see you in a future one, if there is any. I'm hoping to make a couple more, but we'll see where this goes for the rest of the year. Let's hope 2020 treats us a little bit better than 2019 has. And yeah, see you in the next.